Hi everyone, this is attorney Minhas back with another informational video about U.S. immigration. And today's topic is going to be about your questions related to the adjustment of status application for your parents. If this is your first time, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be updated about any new changes or regulations or any updates that I post on immigration. And if this is not your first time back, welcome back to another video. So as I was saying, today's topic is going to be about your questions related to the adjustment of status application for your parents. Now, if you are 21 years of age and a U.S. citizen, you may file a petition for your parents. And if they are lawfully admitted into the United States, they may be eligible to file an adjustment of status application. I do want to mention that if you are a green card holder, then you may not petition for your parents. And trust me, when someone reached out to me and said, but I already filed my citizenship application, I'm waiting to be sworn in. Nope, can't file still. You can't claim something that hasn't happened yet. So once you become a U.S. citizen, and you're over the age of 21, then you may petition for your parents. I do also want to mention that if your parents have a lengthy immigration history, then it would be best to sit down with an immigration attorney to go over their case. And one of the ways that you can request their file from immigration is by submitting a FOIA request, which is a Freedom of Information Act request that gets filed. And if you submit it online, it usually takes about 2 months or so for the entire file to be given to you. You can hire an attorney to do that as well because, a lot of information is going to be on there. They may redact some of the information if they feel that it does not meet the requirements of releasing the information, then they will only give you what they're authorized to give you. So remember, it's called a FOIA request, and you may submit that for your parents to look into their history. And if you don't understand what you received, then you will have to sit down with an immigration attorney to go over it. I do also want to mention that if you are petitioning for more than one parent, each parent gets their own petition. Whether you are filing within the United States for them to adjust their status to a green card, or you are filing through consular processing, which is a process that is done abroad if your parents are living abroad. So remember, each parent gets their own petition, and there is no mixing the petitions. There's no derivative for the parent's application. Each parent gets their own petition. So I wanted to share this information with you today and then get into a little more details about your questions regarding adjustment of status. Stay tuned. So now we're going to go over your questions about the adjustment of status for your parents. Before you file anything, make sure to watch this video. I do want to mention there was someone who reached out and said, Poonam, it's not common for there to be an interview for your parents. This may be true. If it's a straightforward adjustment of status case, then it's a possibility that USCIS may waive the interview. So what does that mean? It means that they have all the necessary documents. There is no suspicion of any type of fraud or misrepresentation or other adverse factors. And they see that this is a straight adjustment of status case. So it is possible for them to say, okay, there's no interview needed here, and we're just going to go ahead and approve and grant the application for the parent to receive their green card. So yes, that does happen. I do want to mention that sometimes that might not be the case. As I mentioned before, if your parent has a lengthy immigration history that is super complicated, then you may want to invest in getting the immigration file to go over it in detail to see what the issues might be. You also have to take a look and see whether there is any type of fraud or misrepresentation issue and whether they qualify for a waiver. You need a qualifying relative for a waiver, and there is extreme and unusual hardship. That's a standard that you need to meet in order to get approved for the waiver. But that's a whole different topic. And of course, things like that may come up. I had also mentioned before that there are also issues of misrepresentation that might arise from when they first applied for their visa to come into the United States. So a lot of times if you apply for a visa abroad to come into the United States, you may, maybe you may have lied, or you hired an agent to fill out an application so you can get a visa. So that sometimes follows you later on when you're trying to seek some type of relief in the United States, so you could potentially settle and get a green card and become a permanent resident and eventually a citizen of the United States. So that's another issue you may want to think about. Another question I do get asked a lot is, Poonam, do my parents have to apply for advance parole? The answer is yes. You should apply for advance parole mainly because if your parents desire to travel and they have their adjustment of status application pending and they decide to travel without getting the advance parole from USCIS, that adjustment of status application will be deemed abandoned. So the right thing to do is file everything concurrently, including for their work permit, to get a social security number, and also for advance parole. It may take a while for the application to be adjudicated, but once they get approved and they have the document, then they may travel outside of the U.S. Don't fall back and rely on the visa that they use to come into the U.S. So if an application was filed for your parents and they still have a valid B1, B2 visa, don't rely on that, because now take a look at the next factor. Their intent now has totally changed. They went from coming into the U.S., seeking to just tour the U.S., right? Just visit and then return back to their home country. That's the whole purpose of that visa. I mean, I know there's been circumstances where people have extended their visa to try to stay in the U.S. based on a medical emergency or because of COVID-19 or other things. And those have been granted, but the intent still is to go back and return to your home country. Now, if an I-130 and an I-485 is filed by your U.S. citizen child who's over the age of 21, your intent now is to permanently reside into the U.S. and become a permanent resident. You see how that can cause an issue? So you want to make sure that not only do you sit with an attorney to go over the case, but you also understand the dynamics of each petition that is filed and what is the purpose of it. You don't want to jeopardize and risk your parents and put them into a situation where they end up spending more money on refiling another application, and you now become part of going back to the beginning where you're waiting all this time and you've invested all these months waiting for your application to be adjudicated and eventually land an interview with USCIS, and then something happens where they travel without permission and now boom, it's denied, and now they have to start all over again. You don't want to deal with that. So that's very important. I wanted to share that in today's video. And yes, the answer is yes, you should file for a work permit and definitely a travel document. You never know when the urge might come up for you to travel outside of the U.S. So it's highly recommended. Applications do take a while to get adjudicated, for you to get an interview. So yes, highly recommended. Please file the appropriate and proper application so you don't run into any issues. Another thing you want to avoid is when your parents enter the U.S. on their tourist visa, you don't want to immediately file an I-130 and 485 like days after they enter. No, that is not recommended. You must wait. Really think about what you're doing before you file these applications. A lot of times people are like, oh, this is easy. These are just forms. We're just going to file applications. No, there's a lot more involved in that than just filing the applications. USCIS looks at the intent. USCIS looks at to see if you committed any type of fraud or misrepresentation. USCIS also looks at whether the intent was formed prior to their entry or after they entered the United States. USCIS will also look into why you rushed into filing these applications if your intent was to return to your home country. So be prepared for maybe an interview to be scheduled for these type of questions to come up, especially because you decided to file these petitions for your parents immediately. I'll give you a hypothetical. There was someone who did not wait to consult with anyone, and their parents came into this country, filed the petitions immediately. Actually, in this scenario, there was only the I-130 that was filed, and the parents wanted to travel back. So there was really no discussion as to what needs to be done once the petitions are filed. So, that kind of became very tricky. Of course, they scheduled a consultation to see what needed to be done to rectify that issue. It was eventually rectified, and now the parents are outside of the country and they're fine. Everything is okay, but you have to be very careful as to what you do that can trigger issues or suspicion amongst USCIS. So, I know sometimes people just file applications because, they're not aware of what the issues might be when it comes up. But of course, there's immigration lawyers for a reason for this type of line of work, who can sit down with you and tell you what the pros and cons are of filing the application too early or too late. I know also a lot of times people have asked me about the 90-day rule. Poonam, does it apply to us? Can we just file right away? Well, the answer depends, right? I'm giving you the typical attorney answer. It depends. What was your intent? Does the 90-day rule apply to you? In some circumstances, yes, it does, because they have this 90-day rule for a reason. Now, what I want you to do is actually look it up and see what that means, or some of you may already know about it. And then if you have questions, you can drop them below. But if it's something that is private and you want to set up a consultation, you may do so separately and we can discuss further. Of course, those are confidential and private and no one will know about it, of course. So again, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope this video was helpful, especially for you if you are filing for your parents and you are a U.S. citizen over the age of 21. Again, if you have any questions, you may drop them below, or if it's private to your matter, I do not suggest you writing your comments below, but to reach out separately. And I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.